Good afternoon, guys, and welcome along to this webinar today called Eat Well, Feel Well. This webinar is funded by the Be Well, Feel Well campaign, a Healthier Suffolk partnership that is focusing on the emotional well-being in our community. This month's theme is Eat Well, Feel Well. This project and this webinar have been commissioned by Suffolk County Council supporting wellbeing in Suffolk. The idea behind this is that we are thinking around what it is that we can focus on bringing into our day-to-day eating habits in order to help us to enhance our well-being and hopefully to feel better as a result of that. If you have any questions at all this afternoon, feel free to use the question and answer function. That should be enabled for you. What we won't have, unfortunately, is you being able to raise hands or ask questions live, but I will do my absolute best to answer any and all questions at the end of today's webinar. And if we do run out of time, which may well happen, then we will do our very best to come back to you and answer any of those outstanding questions as soon as possible. So without further ado, we will begin. So the content of this webinar, as I've said briefly already, looks at the importance of food. We are here today from YMCA Trinity Group. The YMCA is a registered charity and holder of the trusted charity mark. Therefore, training with us also serves to provide support to young people in the wider community. Our passion is helping young people achieve their potential by empowering those who work with them. By attending our training or commissioning our mental health services, you and your organisations help to support our projects and services. I will be pausing at various points today to possibly follow up any questions that may well be typed. But as I said, if not, I will get to them at the end. Please remember that no question is too small and there is no such thing, in my mind anyway, as a silly question. So please do feel free to use the Q&A function. Okay, so guidelines for the webinar. I'm sure you guys are getting used to this kind of way of working now. As we all know, since the pandemic, this has become a much more frequently used method of delivery of training. So hopefully you're used to these and none of these is a complete surprise to you. We are all here today with a non-judgmental and accepting attitude, hopefully. As I've already said a couple of times already, please use the Q&A function and keep yourself in mind as well. If there is anything along this afternoon's journey that feels a little bit tricky or brings yourself and things that you may be going through or have been through to the forefront, then please do take some time away from the webinar and you can always rejoin us at a later point. Or the other thing to mention is that this is being recorded, so the recording of this will be available both on the YMCA Trinity website as well as on the Suffolk Infolink Be Well, Feel Well campaign pages. So please do feel free to come back and have a look at this at a later date at your own leisure. So what we aim to cover in the next hour is the role of food and drink in our lives, why they matter. Recently, research on the relationship between nutrition and mental health has been emerging. Yes, it's important to note that mood can be influenced by many factors such as stress, our environment, poor sleep, genetics, mood disorders, and nutritional deficiencies. Therefore, it's difficult to accurately determine whether food can raise your spirits or bring it down. Nonetheless, certain foods have been shown to improve overall brain health and certain types of mood disorders. When you're feeling down, it can be tempting to turn to food to lift your spirits. However, the sugary, high-calorie treats that many of us resort to can have a negative consequence of their own. Now, just like plants need the right balance of nutrients to grow, we humans too have different ways that can help us to thrive. Whether we thrive is closely linked to these nutrients and the toxins that we may become exposed to. As humans, we also have other reasons driving what we eat or drink what we do. These may be linked to the social situation that we are in. It may have links to how comfortable we're feeling currently, whether it provides us with pleasure. I've already mentioned sweet, sugary treats. And some of us may even be using what we put in our bodies to self-medicate. We are what we eat. As we may well have heard that slogan before, the impact of the nutrients and toxins influences how our body and mind both feels and works. The great thing about this is that we can influence or control it. Certain food and nutrients help your brain make chemicals that can impact your mood, your attention, and your focus. And there are others that can actually zap your energy. By changing what we eat to particular foods, we can see a significant increase in our day-to-day mood and energy. These changes aren't always instant, and it is important to be patient when changing what we eat, and it's best to do it gradually and slowly, adding new foods into our daily diet incrementally. All individuals are different, so we need to explore what works for us. Here are some things to do and think about as you do it. The best meal to enhance your mood is one that combines complex carbohydrates with lean proteins and colourful produce. Carbohydrates, which can also be called carbs, are a type of macronutrient found in certain foods and drinks. Sugars, starches, and fibre are carbohydrates. Your digestive system breaks down carbs into glucose or blood sugar. Your bloodstream absorbs glucose and uses it as energy to fuel your body. The amount of carbs you consume affects blood sugar. Taking in a lot of carbs can raise our blood sugar levels. High blood sugar levels, or hyperglycemia, can put you at risk of diabetes. Some people who don't consume enough carbs have low blood sugar, hypoglycemia. For example, complex carbs are found in whole foods such as sweet potatoes, rolled oats, beans, and quinoa. These can increase the availability of the feel-good chemicals like serotonin in our brains. Protein, another food group that you may have heard of. The consumption of this is also important. Protein is an important part of our healthier diet. Proteins are made up of chemical building blocks called amino acids. Your body uses these amino acids to build and repair muscles and bones, and to make hormones and enzymes. These can also be used as an energy source. The best lean sources are things like chicken, tofu, beans, and unsweetened yogurt. However, it is also important to have a mix of slightly fatter proteins such as beef, fish, turkey, and eggs, as healthy fats are also essential in our more balanced diet. The consumption of these proteins are linked to higher levels of dopamine and knew I'd get stuck on this one, norepinephrine, I'm going to go with. I will put that in the chat for you just so that you can have a little look at how I am spelling that, so that you can at least have some hope of being able to look that up. Hopefully that helps. Anyway, these chemicals, which are the brain chemicals that play a role in our mood and motivation and concentration, and these can be found, as I've said, in foods that are high in protein. Okay, fruits and veg. These are the things that probably are the ones that get talked about the most, the ones that maybe the majority of us feel that we could incorporate more of, and definitely for me, they're the ones that I feel the most guilt over not including enough of in my diet. But they should be just over 1/3 of the food quantity that we eat every day. So trying to eat, as we all know, at least 5 portions of different fruit and vegetables each day. To get the most benefit, we need to include different fruits and vegetables, and this can be thought of as ranging in different color. This is because different fruits and vegetables contain different combinations of fiber, vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. This might include fresh or frozen or tinned or dried or juiced. Any which way that we can get it into ourselves is a great idea. Potatoes are not included in the fruit and vegetable food group. They're actually known as carbs. Some vitamins and minerals can be lost when fruit and vegetables are prepared or cooked. But if that's the only way we can get it into ourselves at the moment, then maybe that's a good place to start. You may have heard of the Mediterranean diet. This has gained significant attention for decreasing symptoms of depression, with key components being the increased intake of vegetables, fruit, omega-3, fish, nuts, legumes, and olive oil. Okay, now having a think about some of those feel-good chemicals that I just spoke about, we're going to go into a little bit more detail around what they are and how they impact us, as well as looking into a little bit deeper where we might get them as well. So the first one we're going to look at is serotonin. This is a chemical that carries messages between our nerve cells even, in the brain and throughout your body. Serotonin plays a key role in body functions such as mood, sleep, digestion, nausea, wound healing, bone health, blood clotting, and even sexual desire. Most of the serotonin found in our bodies is in our gut or in the intestines. About 90% of serotonin is found in the cells lining our gastrointestinal tract. I'll get my words right in a minute. It's released into our blood circulation and absorbed by platelets. Only about 10% is actually produced in our brain. This is why we need to eat foods that help to produce it. There are many foods that are shown to boost serotonin levels, the most famous of these being chocolate. While there are many negative connotations about consuming chocolate, as it is high in sugar, which can, as we know, lead to weight gain, it is also shown to release endorphins when being eaten. It is just as important to eat it in moderation, or to have a healthy alternative, such as perhaps eating dark chocolate. Other foods that naturally contain tryptophan, or the amino acid from which serotonin is made, are salmon, eggs, cheese, turkey, tofu, pineapples, and nuts, oats, and seeds. Okay, thinking a little bit more about dopamine then. This is a type of neurotransmitter. Your body makes it and your nervous system uses it to send messages between nerve cells. That's why it's sometimes called a chemical messenger. Dopamine plays a role in how we feel pleasure, It's a big part of our unique human ability to think and to plan. It helps us strive, focus, and find things that are of interest to us. It's made in the brain through a two-step process. First, it changes the amino acid tyrosine to a substance called dopa, and then into the final product, dopamine. It affects many parts of your behavior and physical functions, such as learning, motivation, sleep, mood, attention, and pain processing. You can increase your dopamine levels naturally by eating a healthier diet, including foods that are rich in L-tyrosine. That's the protein that's needed to make dopamine. These foods can include almonds, avocados, bananas, beef, chicken, and eggs. Other things such as turmeric, vitamin D, magnesium, and omega-3 supplements are also claimed to increase dopamine levels. Activities that make you feel good will also raise the dopamine levels in us. These can include exercising, meditating, having a massage, and my favorite, getting enough sleep. Thinking about your achievements and all the good things in our lives can also help to raise the levels of dopamine in our systems. Okay, so moving on to another neurotransmitter, cortisol. Cortisol is a steroid hormone that your adrenal glands and the endocrine glands at the top of our kidneys produce and release. Cortisol affects different aspects of our body and mainly helps to regulate our body's response to stress. Too much cortisol can aggravate feelings of stress, increase impulsivity, and increase feelings of anxiety. It is an essential hormone that affects almost every organ and tissue in our body. It plays many important roles, including regulating our body's stress response, helping to control our body's use of fats, proteins, carbohydrates, so our metabolism. It also plays a role in suppressing inflammation, regulating our blood pressure, regulating blood sugar, helping to control our sleep-wake cycle. There's no magic food to instantly lower cortisol and stress levels, but certain ingredients can decrease inflammation in the body and start to help regulate the release of too much cortisol. These foods include green tea, cloves, bananas, oranges, melons, spinach, broccoli, sweet potatoes, and definitely not my favorite, prunes. Excess cortisol can cause the kidney to excrete potassium. So these potassium-rich food sources can restore those levels and decrease the side effects that come with stress and elevated cortisol. Okay, endorphins. You may well have heard of this neurotransmitter when we are thinking about some of the more feel-good activities. So these are released when our body feels pain or stress, strangely enough. Your body releases endorphins to help you to survive. When you feel pain, nerves in our body send pain signals to our brain. Then the brain releases endorphins to block the nerve cells that are receiving the pain signals. So they are produced in our brain and act as messengers in our body. Endorphins are produced to help relieve pain, reduce stress, and of course, improve our mood. These can be boosted by healthy exercise, eating particular things, touch, and therefore perhaps getting a massage as well as other activities can increase the amount of endorphins in our body. They have a great number of benefits, and research studies have shown that they can help in the following ways: easing the symptoms of depression. Endorphins released during exercise have been shown to help reduce some of the symptoms associated more commonly with depression. Endorphins can also help with stress and anxiety. As endorphin levels increase, stress and anxiety have been shown to decrease. Endorphins can also improve our self-image. Studies have shown that these all-important neurotransmitters can increase levels of confidence and therefore leading to better self-esteem. So, which foods can help to boost our endorphins? Spicy foods. Though can be a bit tough on the palate, eating spicy foods can lead to a state of bliss because your pain threshold has been kicked in, and that creates your body, or rather kickstarts your body into creating more endorphins in our body. Spicy foods contain a chemical known as capsaicin. I'm going to type that in the chat as well, just so that you can, again, have a little look at this in your own time, if you wish to, of course. It's derived from hot peppers, and therefore, as I just said, it can kickstart that kind of pain endorphin cycle going on in our bodies. Other foods that improve endorphin levels in us are leafy greens. They are also rich in B vitamins. Strawberries, avocados, nuts, and seeds. All of these improve the release of the happy hormone, endorphins, but also can release serotonin, tryptophan, and dopamine, which, as we've already discussed, are all essential mood elevators, if you like. So the vitamins that can help to boost our mood as well. Omega-3 fatty acids, these are a group of essential fats that we must try, if we can, to seek to have in our diet, because our body can't actually produce them on their own. So this is something that we do need to source from outside of our bodies. These fatty acids play a key role in brain development, and they are linked to lowering levels of depression again. This is because through the ingestion of omega-3 fatty acids, we are increasing our learning, our cognitive well-being, and the blood flow through our brain cells. It's also thought that our brain cells with higher levels of omega-3 in their membranes can be better at communicating with other cells. And this is quite an important function, as you can imagine. So omega-3s are typically found in fatty fish, such as salmon or tuna, but there are also a few plant-based sources, such as chia seeds or Brussels sprouts as well. Who knew Brussels sprouts are not just for Christmas time? Okay, so probably one of the most versatile vitamins available is vitamin D. It has long been known to help the body retain calcium and phosphorus, which are vital for making our muscles move and for our nerves to be able to carry messages. Frequently even referred to as the sunshine vitamin, it is most commonly consumed by spending time in the sun. However, if you live anywhere here in the United Kingdom, more often than not, sun is not out. Having just said that, though, this is one of those few moments where sun is shining brightly. I'm sure to be followed by a thundery rain shower. But anyway, I go off point. So vitamin D is commonly referred to as the sunshine vitamin. We can increase vitamin D in our bodies through being sat safely, of course, in the sunshine. But there are foods, more importantly, that can help us with vitamin D into the body as well, such as orange juice, cheese, and something that looks very sun-like, egg yolks. Consuming vitamin D is very important for a multiple variety of reasons, because it also plays a role in regulating our mood. So low vitamin D levels are linked with seasonal affective disorder, which is sometimes known as SAD, but is also linked with our body's ability to fight off diseases. It is still recommended that you supplement this vitamin, as the levels found in food is not always high enough for us to actually reap the benefits. Okay, vitamin B6. Although this vitamin has multiple functions, its primary one is assisting our brain in the creation of dopamine and serotonin. These are the primary chemicals in our brain that help to make us feel good. And we've already discussed their role in our bodies today. So vitamin B6 is a water-soluble vitamin. Water-soluble vitamins dissolve in water, so the body cannot store them. Leftover amounts of the vitamin will leave our bodies through urine. Although the body maintains a small pool of water-soluble vitamins, they have to be taken regularly to have any kind of benefits to the system. A lack of vitamin B6 in the body is uncommon. It can occur in people with kidney failure, liver disease, or alcohol dependence. B6 is also important for regular brain development and maintaining a healthy immune and nervous system. It is found in a lot of food, especially beef liver and other organ meats. However, as this is not everyone's preference, the other foods that you can try are bananas, potatoes, and other starchy vegetables can do the trick as well. Okay, so thinking not just about the types of foods that we are putting in our bodies and how to get them, but moving on to thinking about human beings and their relationship with food. There may be something that upsets you. You may have a fallout with a friend or a family member. You've missed a deadline at work, or you broke your favorite glass. And because of this, you start to feel a certain semblance of not feeling okay. You might want something that makes you feel different to the way that any one of these or all of these events have actually made you feel. So you feel an overwhelming urge to do something about it. I was going to say we go to food, but that's not necessarily true. Not everyone does that. We will all have different ways that we like to change that state of not feeling great. Some of us may go to thinking about a chocolate biscuit. I don't know. Mine is actually crisps. We all have our own vices. So whatever you will, imagine yourself in this situation and you want to change the way that you are feeling. If at any one of these times, the urge is to go for something to eat, the idea in our kind of heads is that I'll pick that up and I will start to feel better. So then you might find yourself eating more of the foods that you know that actually maybe provide temporary relief, or you pick up a drink that is high in sugar, and it might be your third can of Coca-Cola, for example, that day. Other brands are available. Apologies, no kind of free advertising on here, but you get the idea. Once this cycle has been established in terms of this is what I go to try and feel better, making that change can actually feel really difficult, whatever that go-to method is. The more often that you reach for that thing or that drink or that activity, the more embedded it will become. The more embedded it becomes, the more powerless and guilty we may begin to feel around these things. And this makes us feel bad, like the original activity or fallout or broken glass did, and the cycle starts all over again. So thinking about what we choose to do when we are feeling not great can make a big difference. Because this webinar is called Eat Well, Feel Well, we are going to focus on that activity, which is eating when we are feeling emotionally more vulnerable. So forgive me if in your mind's eye you have a different activity, but the webinar today obviously is going to stick with the subject of emotional eating. To that term itself, actually, emotional eating, that refers to using food to make oneself feel better, to fill an emotional need, rather than because we're hungry or because we need some kind of nutritional value from the food. Unfortunately, emotional eating doesn't go as far as we would like it to fix our emotional problems, because if it did, we would constantly be walking around feeling on top of the world. In fact, it can make us feel worse. Afterwards, not only does the original emotional issue or state remain, but we can also start to feel guilty for having eaten excessively. The first step in changing emotional eating habits is identifying our personal triggers. What situations, places, or feelings make us reach for the comfort of food or a drink that we know is not great for us? Most emotional eating is linked to unpleasant feelings, but it can also be triggered by positive emotions, such as rewarding ourselves for achieving a goal or celebrating a holiday or a happier event. The first step in putting a stop to this, I don't want to keep calling it emotional eating, because there is obviously our emotional drinking of things as well. But the first step to stopping the way that we react using food or drink when we are feeling some displeasure or a heightened sense of emotion is identifying, as I've said, our personal triggers. So let's have a think about what we may do instead. If we aren't going to end up using food or drink, then we need to think about what replaces it. What else can we put in place of the thing that we have done for the number of years that we have been doing it? So, as well as identifying our triggers of when that happens, a great way to do that could be to actually start to journal some of this down and make a note of what happens when, I don't know, you have a tight deadline at work, for example. What do you do with that? Where does it begin? Where does it feel in our bodies? And what's the next step after that? So when it then does come to thinking about what's the next step, we can start looking at things such as swapping foods out. So in my case, as I said to you, it's crisps is my go-to. Swapping the crisps out so that they are some of those vegetable crisps. I still go to the place where I know that I get some sense of comfort back, but it is a slightly healthier alternative. So it will be lower in sugar, lower in saturated fats, lower in salt as well. And actually doesn't taste too bad either. Another option could be to wait 5 minutes. So rather than denying yourself that strategy, whatever it might be, you're actually just delaying it. So delay rather than deny. And if you get to the 5-minute timer going off and you still want to have that, then okay. But over time, that may get to a place where you are starting to break that cycle that we looked at. You could even choose to call on someone, call on a neighbor, call on a friend, do a different activity that maybe involves making a connection with somebody else in your community, whether that be, as I said, face to face, so knocking for a neighbor, or on the mobile phone. Another activity, for those of us that are lucky to have this, is playing with a pet or taking a pet for a walk, just spending some time maybe with a dog or a cat, or even looking at old photographs of happy times where, I don't know, maybe when your babies were younger. Or I'm quite sad, I actually have a lot of pictures on my mobile phone of my dog. So wherever I might be, if I don't actually have access to the dog itself, I'm able to pull out those pictures and have a little flick through. If you're worried and you want to use up some of that kind of worried or nervous energy, then you can do something a little bit more physical. Dancing, you don't have to be ballroom trained in order to get up and just bust a move to some of your favorite tracks, or squeezing a stress ball. Some of these activities may well be a bit cliched, but actually they give you that release. If you don't want to squeeze a stress ball, then maybe juggling with some balls. It takes your mind off of what your body was trying to take you to go and do, the strategy that you relied on, and it takes you to a different place where you have to focus on something else. Or, as the weather improves at the moment, taking a brisk walk outside in the fresh air. You might think actually moving around isn't great for me at this moment in time, because that's when I go for those foods or for those drinks that are maybe not great for me, I'm actually feeling quite exhausted with all the emotions going on for me. Then maybe this is the time to pick up a hot drink, not necessarily caffeine. You could make yourself a herbal tea, and I know for some people that is absolutely akin to drinking dishwater, in which case maybe a hot chocolate, anything that is warming, even if you don't then go the full way of actually taking that whole drink on board, but holding it and just breathing in some of that aroma can actually feel really comforting. Or maybe taking a bath, lighting some scented candles, sitting in a slightly darkened room, just inhaling the steam from a hot bath, or wrapping yourself up in a blanket. That feels, I guess, the next best thing to having a hug. And not all of us are great at asking for that kind of help and support when we feel vulnerable of, please, can I just have a hug? Not as easy when we're fully grown adults as it is when we're a child and maybe we've fallen over or we feel a little bit anxious about something. And crying worked a treat, because hopefully a parent would come over or a carer and give us a hug. But a warm blanket may well go some way to alleviating that lack of physical touch. If when these kinds of things occur and these triggers happen, you actually start to feel not, as if you want to talk to somebody, or not as if, getting up and moving around or being comforted is what you want to do. Perhaps you feel bored. And at that point, it might be a great thing to have an explore of a new area, or looking to reading a book, learning a new skill. I mentioned juggling earlier, but maybe that's when you want to kind of think about just doing something quiet on your own, like scrapbooking or learning how to play guitar. But all of these activities, as you can see, looking around that flower, I guess it is, can be incorporated into this kind of way of making sure that we are doing things other than perhaps turning to our learned behaviors, which sometimes can feel worse and go on to fuel that cycle that we spoke about, of kind of slightly more unhealthy coping strategies. Okay, now I did just mention a moment ago in terms of hot drinks, and caffeine has a role to play in our lives. If you're not somebody who has caffeine on a daily basis, then hats off to you, because you've obviously done very well with finding other alternatives. But let's have a little think about caffeine and the role of it in our lives, and particularly on sleep, just over the next couple of slides. Just a reminder again, if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the Q&A function, and I will stop and answer them as I can, or answer them at the end of our time together today. So caffeine is a naturally occurring product in our central nervous system. It's a stimulant that occurs naturally in more than 60 plants, coffee beans, tea leaves, and cola nuts being amongst some of those. It's a stimulant, which means that it increases activity in our brains and our nervous system. It also increases the circulations of chemicals such as cortisol and adrenaline in the body. In small doses, caffeine can make us feel refreshed and focused. It is most frequently consumed to improve mood as well as boost our alertness. It blocks a chemical called adenosine, which is the chemical that often makes us feel tired or relaxed and able to let go. A healthy dosage of caffeine is 3 to 7 milligrams per 1 kilogram of body weight. Now, my maths is not very good, but if you wish to get out a calculator to work out what your healthy dosage of caffeine is, I'll say that again. So a healthy dose of caffeine for human beings is somewhere between 3 to 7 milligrams per 1 kilogram of body weight. An average coffee contains somewhere between 95 to 200 milligrams of caffeine. So if you did do the maths in the first instance, as I spoke about it, you can work out whether having 2 average coffees in a particular day is going to do wonders for your healthy dose or not. I imagine, even without having done the calculation, that that's probably not a great thing to have had more than 1 average coffee per day. I'll say that again. The average coffee contains somewhere between 95 to 200 milligrams of caffeine. So I'm assuming, your double espresso is probably closer to the 200 milligrams of caffeine mark. Okay. As I've already said, caffeine is effective in small quantities in order to help us with our energy levels and to create more focus. It is, however, given the dosages I've just spoken about, important to manage the amount of caffeine that we consume, because it can, of course, affect our sleep in a negative manner. As I've already said, it is a stimulant and it can aggravate or induce feelings of over alertness, even anxiety and a racing heart. This can be useful when we need it. However, as you can imagine, it's very unhelpful if we don't, especially if we have a tendency towards feeling anxious or angry or stressed or at things or at various points during the day anyway. If we are feeling low or sluggish and stuck, it could be helpful to boost our energy and help us to do the things that support the feel-good neurotransmitters. Now, our body clock works on a circadian rhythm or a cycle, and it's a natural way of regulating how much sleep we need and what we go through. Our circadian cycle runs through a cycle every 24 hours. It can refer to any process that originates within an organism and that responds to the environment around it. Caffeine disrupts the circadian rhythm, even in small amounts. The internal clock that tells our body when to sleep and when to wake can be disrupted by caffeine. The amount of caffeine in a double espresso shifts this clock by 40 minutes on average. So as caffeine has a half-life of 3 to 5 hours, that's how much time it takes for your body to eliminate 50% of the chemical. It's important to take it at the right times. So 3 to 5 hours, I'm just looking at that. Let's just go with, even if it was the 3 hours, the body takes half of that time. No, the body takes 3 hours to eliminate 50% of the caffeine that you've taken at, let's say, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening. You have a coffee, only 50% of that will have been shifted out of your body by 8 o'clock that evening. The other 50% is still in your body. So that brings the whole idea of how much we have and when we have it to the forefront. One of the most obvious effects of caffeine on us is obviously that it can delay the time that our body then feels ready to go to sleep, because it's messed with the natural kind of timing of it. It can also affect the quality of our sleep. So it can reduce the amount of deep sleep that we actually enjoy every evening. So I guess the big message there is think about how much we're consuming in a day, and also whereabouts in our day that caffeine is kicking in. It can be tempting, as I've just mentioned, that 5 o'clock, sort of 4 o'clock time, that post-afternoon lull, where you just need to get through the last little bit to reach for a coffee, even if it's, you know, a milky latte type thing, it's still going to have some caffeine in it. So perhaps that is the time for our brisk walk to wake ourselves up, and stick to the caffeine, perhaps being earlier on in the day. Of course, this is all subject to you being somebody who isn't working shifts or doesn't need to be awake overnight for various reasons. If you are hoping to fall asleep at sort of 9-10 o'clock of an evening, because you've got to get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock the following day, then we just need to think about when that last caffeine hit, if you like, was taken. Okay. So the way that you eat, when you eat, where we eat, and what we eat can have an impact on parts of our life. We've started to obviously hint at this throughout this webinar today. It can impact us socially, have an impact on how well or not we work, our fitness levels as well. Following specific diets can often make us feel like we are left out of certain situations, perhaps a social situation like going to a party or going to a pub or a restaurant. There then can be that kick in of feelings of guilt or isolation. So, for example, I go to a restaurant and I'm following a particular diet and I can't eat certain things, but I do because it's my friend's birthday and it's a celebration, and why not? That guilt may well kick in much later on that evening. Or the other option I might have is to not join in with the birthday cake or the Prosecco to toast my friend's birthday. And that can then lead to feelings of isolation. And none of these feelings, guilt or isolation, are ones that I believe human beings enjoy very much. So eating an balanced and varied diet is actually much more beneficial for us than following something that might feel more taxing or stressful in the long run. And eating the balanced and the varied diet can actually help us to enjoy ourselves when we're out socializing or being on holiday. And it means that no food really feels like a forbidden food, or is it naughty foods? I'm just thinking to some kind of different eating plans and things, as to how some foods are then vilified and made to feel as if they should be ones that we stay away from forever. So that is, I guess, something to bear in mind, and perhaps a bit of a warning against perhaps following specific diets. So that's just something to bear in mind. Okay, lots of ways that we can work around getting to a place where what we are doing is eating in a balanced and yet way that means we still feel great, rather than following some of these diet patterns. So some top tips, if you like, that we would like to share with you that might help along the whole journey, which can feel a bit overwhelming. So one suggestion is prepping our meals, finding a free couple of hours wherever in your week that sits. For some people that might be a Sunday evening, which actually for me helps to ward off the Sunday scaries, as well, as we call them in our household, because rather than sitting around and thinking about what my working week may look like, certain deadlines that I may or may not have hit, or meetings that I've got to attend, my mind is distracted, if you like, by getting lots of things ready for the following week. So batch cooking in advance, things that you know can live in the fridge. Even just penning out a meal plan for the week. It doesn't have to be the actual prepping of the meal, but just coming up with a meal plan for the week, making sure that you've got all of the groceries that go with it. That actually has another benefit, which is that I budget much better for the coming week by knowing that I don't have to dash to the shops, say on a Wednesday evening, because I hadn't thought about what we were going to eat that evening. Although when it turns into, rather than a dash to the shop, it turns into a let's get a takeaway. The children love that. That's their absolute favorite. But hey, they're teenagers, so what do they know about healthy eating, right? So yeah, one of the suggestions we have for you is meal prepping, making lots of meals that you can simply grab throughout the week when you're on the go, or you finish work late, or you've got to be here, there, and everywhere. And as I say, that can actually help budget as well. So you don't have to make every meal from start to finish, just even getting things ready, chopped up, and so on and so forth will help. One of my favorite things to do is to have breakfast prepared the night before. So overnight oats, if that is something that you know that you can stomach, then that is a great way to make sure that A, I don't skip out on breakfast, and B, that it's already ready in between all of the other activities that I do of a morning. There are also companies out there that specialize in delivering whole kind of boxes with the ingredients for particular meals already prepped for you. So if that is something that you are interested in, that might be something that you want to have a look at. Looking up recipes and making them a family event where you can get other people together and get involved, and that might be something, depending on your household and who's in it, that you can actually bring into the mixture here as well. So rather than you being the only one in the kitchen doing all of this, is there a particular rota that you can stick to depending on the ages of the people in the household? It might be something that actually is a shared responsibility as well. Something that we quite often used to do was have a different themed night for meals. So you might have a Mexican night or an Indian night, and so on and so forth. And it was my youngest that came up with around the world. We'll just have an around the world night, which is a little bit of everything. So trying to make it a little bit more fun and engaging could be a great idea as well. And I think it's important here to mention the regularity of eating throughout the day, so that you don't find yourself getting to about 4 o'clock of an evening and thinking, hang on a minute, I skipped out on breakfast and lunch. Oh, I deserve now. And then reaching for that fast food or that slice of chocolate cake or whatever else it might be. So there are things to be mindful of, or actually reaching for that coffee at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock because your blood sugar level has dropped. So making sure that we are eating regularly throughout the day, rather than all of a sudden being caught unawares and realizing that this was probably not ideal, and then hitting that repeat button where you've reached for something that was instantly gratifying, but 3 hours later, a day later, you actually fall back into that cycle of feeling guilty, you feel bad, the cycle that we looked at a little while ago. Okay, I haven't had any questions come into the Q&A, so what I'm going to do is just share some of our resources with you. A lot of information has been taken from Mind today, and they have some great tips and strategies on their website, so please do have a look at that. And healthysuffolk.org, their 5 ways to well-being. Some of those will look familiar to you when you go back and have a look with the flower that we had, which was thinking about different things. So making sure that we stay active, or we are connecting with those around us in our community or in our family as well. So the 5 ways to well-being, a really useful tool as well. And finally, I think the only thing that remains for me to say is thank you for joining us. I will leave that QR code on there for a moment or two, because that gives you the chance to give us some feedback. You can, if you are watching this on record as well, feel free to scan the code. You can still leave us feedback on the recording that you've just listened to. Any hints and tips for us on how to improve our webinar, or any questions that you want to add onto the bottom of the evaluation form, we look through each and every one of them. So that would be really helpful. And just to say that a lot of the images for this webinar have been taken from Unsplash and Alexa's photos. So thank you to those guys for that. Feel free, as I say, to scan that and then leave us your feedback, and we will respond to you if it requires a personal response. But if it's something more general about the webinar or our delivery style, then of course we will take that on board as well. And we really do value any and every feedback, not just the positive stuff. So please do come on board and let us know what you thought. And finally, just another website to draw your attention to is the Keep Your Head website, which is for Cambridge and Peterborough mental health, all things mental health, you know, support and places to be, and anything really, resources that you want to look at that you can use for yourself as well. So it's a really amazing website and well worth a visit, mostly because it's particularly for Cambridge and Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, sorry, and Peterborough. So please do go on there and have a look and use any and all resources that you think would be useful to you. And finally, from me, at YMCA Trinity Group, we have the mental health services team, where we do delivery of training, as you've just witnessed, but also we have lots of clinical services on hand for you as well. This includes group work and mentoring, therapeutic interventions for young people in educational settings and other settings too. So please do get in touch if you would like any more information on any of this on the slide here, and we'd be more than happy to answer questions or get in touch and just talk you through the things that we are able to offer you. Other than that, I hope you have a lovely afternoon, and thank you for joining me here today.